We now have nearly 15 minutes for discussion before we run into the coffee break. So I would like to open the floor for more general discussion. You have here a microphone and Peter?
I would like to ask...
the microphone, please.
Thank you, sorry. I would like to ask you, Ram, you showed us the integrated systems, ducks, fish. I would like to know, is that on the increase at the moment in Asia, or is that being avoided at the moment? Or is it back on the increase?
So I can reply now.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Good question. It's actually not increasing. It's decreasing. Yeah. Because of the concern, environmentalists or some people from maybe Europe actually, questioning a lot of things, what happens, salmonella or something like that. I think also another region like bird flu especially, when they combine with chicken and when bird flu is there, then chicken, their chicken business is gone, and then they have to dry pond and something like that. Some people might have even shifted from chicken to aquaculture alone. Like in Bangladesh, it's happening. Some poultry companies are investing completely in aquaculture only. So instead of integrated farming or chicken alone to aquaculture. So more sustainable, they see more sustainable, more, although profit may be, depends on what they do, but still they see more reliable, let's say, compared to chicken industry. Mm-hmm. So the question is, integrated farming, okay, it's not increasing, it's decreasing. But in the past, people were doing that one maybe hundreds of years actually. And that was actually more sustainable. And people are, nowadays, I think most of the people are business oriented. If there is no business, then they stop doing that. So business is driving, and then creating some more problems, environmental problem or other problems, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'd like to address this question to both Albert as well as Dominique. Why do you think there is so little research done on Penaeus venomei? Where's the bottleneck? Is it a question of money? No one wants to share information, or is it just done by private companies?
I mean, I think a lot of work, done by large companies like CP, yes, obviously they have their home, like we do with our salmon. They do exactly the same for shrimp. I think one of the main problems is just that shrimp is an animal also that it can get a lot of nutrition from the natural food organisms in the water column and in the benthos. And so, a lot of the work originally was based in a laboratory, in aquariums, and that's good up to a certain level, but because we culture shrimp in so many different types of culture systems, density, water management, it's a lot harder. And really, there's only 3 species, basically, that we culture. And so I really don't know why there's not more information.
I can add something. I guess Albert is right, is very different nutrition. I call shrimp nutrition difficult nutrition, not so, because it's very difficult to truly characterize nutrient requirements, so it's quite difficult. However, I find that we haven't kept our eyes on the prize, at least researcher in Asia especially, in Latin America, have been seduced by molecular biology and gene expression and digging, what I call digging the hole deeper and not looking around and say what's the industry needs in terms of information. So just basic work that looks not very fancy, but actually will be very widely useful to an industry and the aquaculture industry in general. And I think they're seduced a bit by the call of the mermaid or whatever, the sirens and etc.
And if I can just add to that, I've just finished producing a bibliography. It's about 800 pages, just on the nutrition and feeding of Penaeus shrimp. but one of the things that we did is as well as looking at the English literature, is there's so much information on the amino acid requirements of shrimp in Chinese. And Dom knows that. I mean, every 2 years, the nutritionists in China get together. And it's not lots of parallel sessions, it's just one session all in one go. And there's information on the amino acid requirements of Vaname there, for example, or Monodon. But all I'm just saying is that there is a lot of information and we've got to capture that.
In the past 5 years, the level, and that to be fair, is Albert is entirely right. I think I see positive signs in the past 5 years. For example, in China, where a few years ago I would go in China and bring scientific papers and nobody would read a word of English and says, well, what do you bring in English literature? 4 years later, 5 years later, everybody is dissecting the paper and criticizing the paper. So there's been a lot of progress being made. So we're just coming to the
Can
Briefly,
I just add
please.
on? Sorry. Can
Yeah.
I just add on, Dominic, you showed that when you did the NRC requirements, there was, I think, only one amino acid requirement that was fulfilled for Vaname. Did you take into consideration the papers that the Chinese did, or was it a question of problem of timing?
It was partly a problem of timing, problem of access to the literature, etc. We did the NRC 2011 in 15 months. We had 15 months to cover dozens of species, fish and shrimp, and etc. So you're just thinking amino acid. I did amino acid and nutritional energetics, and it was just an overload. But yeah, there's a need to go to the Asian literature and dig deeper, where we couldn't find it on the regular database information.
I actually have a question first to Katerina and then to Ram. Is the first, Katerina, you showed the work that the salmon industry is doing, and we will see more in the second session from Adele. Why is it the salmon industry so targeted by the media in terms of its environmental impact, comparing, for instance, with other aquaculture regions and species?
Well, maybe because of the size of the industry. I would expect that shrimp is also facing the same type of challenges. I think, as I said, the industry has a lot to do to keep our house in order, so to say. So there's a lot of things that we have to do to make the industry completely free of this kind of accusations. That's one thing that we need to work on. But it is very important that we become much better on the way we communicate, and that we bring also these positive messages across. And we are being too reactive, too defensive, and I think we should be more bold on really telling the good story we have to tell, and to be proud of the possibility of aquaculture and salmon farming to contribute to feed all this growing population. Yeah.
And Ram, in the Asian situation, I mean, you obviously showed some examples and mentioned some examples on diseases and the shrimp with EMS. We also know that pangasius have been in the spotlight also in terms of sustainable issues. What's your opinion how the industry can answer to these difficult questions from the public?
Problem, the journalists, especially environmental journalists, they are actually not really technical persons, and then they just, when they see something, cage culture, oh, there is a pollution, but they don't go down how pollution happens and what is the pollution indicators, level of nitrogen or level of phosphorus or something. So without knowing, this has exaggerated, in my opinion, these things. But if they go and see how fish are grown, and they have been even certified, there are maybe, I don't know how many companies are there to certify pangasius alone, right, in Vietnam. And then this is, I think, more about exaggeration, and then some people, not necessarily everybody agrees on one thing. Some people believe on something, some people believe on other things. That's why there will be always, opposition, like opponents, let's say, of any industry. Some are maybe intentional, some are maybe unintentional. They don't know, just they talk about it, and then create some sort of confusion among the public. I think, in my opinion, that is the reason.
Mhm.
Can I also just
Yeah.
add something? I think transparency is also one important element here. And for instance, sometimes people ask us how, on your annual reports, for instance, which are public, right? We do disclose data on antibiotic use and other issues. And I really believe it is so much better to be honest about the problems and try to solve them and explain how are you dealing with the situation. And in some industries where you see that that is not enough, where transparency is not big enough, then I think it's easier that people think that you don't say because you have a lot of things to hide.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Any questions from the audience at this point? Pedro?
I just want to contribute to this discussion because this morning we were listening that it's the battle between chicken and fish, and at the end chicken is going to win because fish has some problems in terms of environmental problems, right? But if you look, you presented, you are using 2.3% antibiotics in your feeds. If you compare this with poultry and swine, where antibiotic growth promoters are used freely. We're looking at FCRs. We are having FCRs of, in the south, for example, the salmon industry, 1.2 compared to the other ones. We are much more efficient. They are still going back to it's the fish meal issue, but the industry has moved away from fish meal, and fish meal is now only a small part of the diets. Why there's still this perception that aquaculture is bad for the environment and we are exploiting the fish resources and so on. So I think the industry still needs to do much more work in terms of promoting and putting out there that the industry has evolved and it's no longer like 20 years ago.
Can I just add something? I agree totally, but I think we are seeing some signs of improvement. For instance, National Geographic a few months ago, they actually released a story on their website about salmon getting greener and leaner. So, and that we have never seen before. And I think these commitments like the Global Salmon Initiative and the ASC will help the industry moving forward. Now, from a journalistic point of view, of course, bad news is always better than good news. So inherently, we will have more challenges to bring those positive stories out there. But we just have on keeping to building up on those positive stories. Yeah.
Can I just add something, if you let me? We always talk about the negative impact of aquaculture, but there are positive environmental impact. And we've done research in freshwater showing that native lake trout were growing faster, reproducing younger, and being healthier than ever in a small lake where Big Cage was located. And I'm sure in Norway there's some case where I was hearing about different fish swimming around the cage and etc. It's providing food and habitat. So we're not always the bad guys, but we never sell that story. We're always kind of defend it. And these negative stories, where they come from the west coast of Canada and the US, where there's no history of agriculture. Like in Norway, there's always an history of agriculture and fisheries. And it's very affluent people living there, and it's not in my backyard. And it's driven by not in my backyard, including the Alaska wild salmon sea ranchers that have been driving and funding all these efforts, covertly funding all these efforts.
Albert?
No, I agree. I just think that we, as an industry, have to be proactive rather than reactive. And the problem with aquaculture is like saying agriculture. Agriculture is so big. We never have meetings on agriculture. We have on poultry or swine or different. And I think we're going to have to do the same in aquaculture one day. And that is, we split it up by species groups or just because it is so big.
Actually, I'm basically a farmer. It's not a question just sharing that information. Whenever we have a challenges, we will come through, we will go through. I'm in this field from 1993. That time, I'm from India basically. So that time, almost all the environmentalists and that NGO stood against that aquaculture. Because of that only, India, now it becomes sustainable. I can tell. I really thank the NGO who stood against aquaculture development. And the Coastal Aquaculture Authority, we are having a sustainable development norms by the government of India. Any SPF shrimps comes to India, it has to go through the quarantine systems. If there is no quarantine systems, if it is not certified by the government of India, that parent stock cannot be allowed into any hatcheries. There is a beautiful system when that in the industry is growing because of our opposite side people. Otherwise, it could have been collapsed. I really think, because whenever, even for that salmon culture, the people stood against that. Now it's growing stronger and stronger. In the shrimp farming also worldwide, there were a lot of agitations against doing shrimp farming. I tell you one thing, this aquaculture is a stock raising program against natural hunting in the wild. Only that stock raising program can feed the global growing populations. So we should be passionate to that industry which we belongs. Thanks for the opportunity.
Does anyone want to comment on this? I would welcome a few last questions before we move to the coffee break.
I have a question for Ram. Ram, in your presentation, you showed a lot of what we call traditional farming. What about the commercial farming side of Asia, our shrimp farming or Pangasius farming? I mean, we do have a lot of Pangasius farms which are already Global GAP certified and also ASC certified. So any comment on that, on the progress?
Yeah, what I was trying to show is traditional methods were more sustainable, and business has pushed farmers to use only pellet feeds and then antibiotics, all these things, and then to produce more to be profitable. So problem is there, and okay, there is a problem. Shrimp farming, has been blamed, for cutting down the forest or mangrove areas. But Thailand has a good example. They have intensified the production per hectare, producing 10 ton or even 20 ton, so that they don't need to occupy so much land. So now they are showing mangrove area is increasing. So that's how they are tackling, the questions from environmentalists. So commercial farming is there. Otherwise, countries cannot export and earn $2 billion, $3 billion a year. So shrimp industry in Thailand and Pangasius is also the same. But what is happening also now, competition for price. Some Pangasius price goes, low, and then maybe 30% farmers come out from the business. That is happening. That is sure in business. That happens even in rice or in other crops. So your question is whether these commercial systems are sustainable or not, right? I mean, until now, shrimp has a problem. I showed already. Sometimes collapse, like a monodon collapse, and then white shrimp came. Again, white shrimp, after 15 years, they enjoyed good profit, and then again, EMS is coming now. So it has problem. But compared to shrimp, Pangasius has not that problem, big problem like a collapsing, and then seeking alternative things like that. So that's my point. But nobody knows Pangasius may also collapse. In that case, how we will survive or how we will tackle. For example, I'm saying EMS disease, 3 years, people still could not really find out the solution. So same thing will happen. That's why the research in aquaculture is very weak, I think, compared to other poultry or even salmon. That's my point. So how we can work together? We need more concentrated efforts.
Yeah, but Ram, what I'm saying also is that, sorry?
Maybe we need to close down this discussion because a very important thing now is the coffee break. Otherwise, there won't be time for that. Thank you very much. I would like to thank you all the speakers for this morning, for this first session.